Hi guys! Today I'm gonna show you how I extended this pillowcase so that it would fit my husband's pillow. So these are Ikea bed sheets that I bought recently. I loved the pattern. I absolutely loved especially the green shade in this flowery pattern. And I knew that the pillowcase would be fine for my small orthopedic pillow where it's actually almost too big and I have to tuck it in a little bit, but my husband's pillow is 90 times 70 centimeters, so I knew I would have to come up with some creative idea how to extend the pillow. So I decided I'm gonna create kind of a frame around the original rectangle, which is what I did. So here is what the finished product looks like. So first let's talk about how I decided on what fabric I wanted to have for the frame. So I didn't find any unicolor fabric that would have the same green shade, which I find is the most dominant in this original pattern. So I thought, okay, I have to look for some patterned fabric. And I thought either it's gonna be a very similar pattern, maybe even different colors, but it's gonna look like these two patterns belong together, or I'm gonna find a different pattern that shares certain dominant elements. And I was lucky to find this gorgeous green striped fabric where the green shade is almost identical to the green shade on the original pattern, and the little reddish flowers are exactly the same shade like these sections of the flowers on the original pillowcase. So I thought this is gonna go really well together. So I bought the pattern. I bought only 1 meter. I thought that's gonna be enough. And then I had to come up with the measurements. So let's have a look at how I decided what measurements the frame should have. This rectangle represents the original Ikea pillow. I did not want to bother with opening stitches, so I simply cut off the edges. And then I placed it on the pillow in question, I centered it, and I decided I wanted to cut it back a little bit. And then I had this new rectangle. The measurements don't matter, it was just whatever I found pretty. There's no right and wrong. You can decide on the size yourself. Now you can start measuring, and you can do that in 2 different ways. You grab the rectangle that you just cut out of the Ikea pillowcase and you place it on the pillow you want the pillowcase extend for. Or you have a larger pillowcase that fits your pillow, then use that for reference, because it's a little bit easier since you can lay it flat on the table and the measuring is a little bit easier. Whatever you choose, you have to consider that the rectangle you're working with now actually already includes seam allowance. So this interrupted line represents the actual size of the rectangle you will get once you will be done sewing. So any measurements have to start here on the inside where the interrupted line is. So the best way is to grab a guide and a sewing crayon and make a line on the inside of your rectangle so that you know where you have to measure, which is what I did not do, so I messed up a little bit. But that's okay, I'm gonna tell you how to do it right. So now we marked our seam allowances around the large rectangle, and on the small rectangle on the inside we can start measuring. I decided I wanted to have angled seams for the panels that I wanted to add. And that meant when this is the actual seam that I wanted to achieve, I have to go a little bit over. Now let's look at the top panel first. So that's why here this purplish line that goes over, or like a purplish section that goes over the seam, I went on the inside towards the interrupted line. I did the same here on this side. So here we have the actual seam. So we go a little bit over. And then I have to consider the seam allowance on the top. And here we go. That is the size of the panel you want to have on the top and on the bottom. And I did the same on the side. So again, here we have the actual seam. I went over, which is the width of the seam allowance. I went toward the interrupted line. I went here over the actual seam again. Here we have the actual edge then once the pillow will be finished. So I added seam allowance 2, and these are gonna be the measurements. So you have here one corner and one corner. This is gonna be the width of the shorter section, and this is gonna be the width of the longer section. And yeah, here we have the length of the side that's angled, and that's how you measure again also the top section. So the corner will be here. I will make it a little bit bigger, and this is where you measure from and towards, and then you measure here on the side like so, and that will be your panels. As I mentioned, I messed up. I did not consider the seam allowance of the rectangle inside, so that's why I had to do some adjustments when I was sewing, but the procedure was the same, so it's okay. You can still look at how I did that, and if you consider the correct way to measure, you'll be fine. You can also make the panels differently. You could make just 2 long rectangles, one on the top, one on the bottom, and then you would have these smaller rectangles on the side. That would work too. Or if you have enough fabric, simply cut out the actual size that you want to have, and then cut out this size where the interrupted line is, and then you could sew in your rectangle. That would work too. Or simply sew the rectangle on. Fold in the edges, sew it on, and it's gonna be even less work. Whatever works for you. So these are the possibilities. Now you know how to measure, and we can start making the pillowcase. Once I cut out all the panels that I needed for my pillowcase, I started pinning them at the angled sections. If you are using regular sewing machine for this project, you can sew the sections with straight stitch, and you can edge the seams with zigzag. I have used my serger, which made things a little bit faster, but both works. Once the pieces were sewn together, I ironed the frame so that the seams would lay nicely flat. And while I was at it, I also ironed the rectangle that I cut out of the Ikea pillow, because it just looks nicer and it's easier to work with. To make pinning of the rectangle inside of the frame easier, I cut the corners at an angle. Once the pieces were pinned together, I went to my serger and I have sewn everything in place. Again, you can use household sewing machine, go in with straight stitch, and then you can edge the seams with zigzag. Once the rectangle has been sewn inside of the frame, I had my first part for the new pillowcase, and I went on and pressed the piece. Since I did not want to create a closure on my pillowcase, I needed a little rectangle that I would sew on one of the shorter sides that would create kind of a pocket for the pillow on the inside. So the height was obviously the same height as the shorter side of the pillow, and I made it about 15 centimeters wide, so that's just a few inches. And I pinned the rectangle on the side of the newly created pillow piece. I folded the edge twice inside like so and pinned it in place. And then it looked like this. So I went on to my serger and I have sewn the piece in with my serger, and then I have sewn on my regular sewing machine through the folded edge with straight stitch. Once the rectangle was sewn on, I did the same on the other side, only the rectangle was a little bit smaller. So in centimeters, I would say it was like 6 centimeters wide, the rectangle I worked with. And then I went on and pressed both sides of the pillow. I folded the sewn on rectangles along the seams and pressed the seam. Once that was done, I grabbed one side of the pillow and placed it on a table like so, with the rectangle folded inside. That was the larger rectangle that will create the pocket. And then I grabbed the second piece and put it on top of the first one like so. Here the little rectangle is folded upwards. I made sure that the extended rectangles were on the same side because that will be the opening for the pillow. And then I simply started pinning the remaining 3 edges of the pillow like so. I'm not gonna go into further details because I already have a tutorial for a pillowcase on my channel. So if you need more information how to make a pillowcase, please watch that video. Link is in the video description. The stitch that you can use in order to sew together the 3 edges could be either a straight stitch on your regular sewing machine and then you can edge the seam again with zigzag, or you can use serger. And here we have the finished pillowcase once all the edges have been sewn together, and the rectangle on the side that is facing with the right side up is the little pocket for the pillow. I turned the pillowcase to the right side and then I started shaping the seams and the edges. For shaping the edges, I used simply a pen. You could use a beveler or any tool that is pointy but not sharp so that it would not damage the edges. And of course, I went on and ironed the pillowcase. I still did some rolling of the edges to make sure that when I ironed the pillowcase that everything would be neat. All that was left was to grab the freshly ironed new pillowcase and put it on the pillow. I was super happy with the result and proud of my work until I realized that I messed up something in the measurements and the pillow was a little bit too wide. So I had to open a few stitches and I had to reduce the width on both sides by about an inch, maybe a little bit more. But once I corrected my mistake and I finished exactly the same way you have just seen, the pillow looks really nice. I'm super happy with the result. My husband loves it. We also love these 2 patterns together. I would say it's patterns you would not intuitively put together, but they really look great together. It looks like they were meant to match. I don't know. I really like it. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? So both my husband and I are super happy with the outcome, because we really wanted to get these bed sheets since we loved the pattern, and this shade of green is one of our favorite shades. I will definitely film at some point a tutorial for a pillowcase for my orthopedic pillow, because it's the one that is bulged out on 2 sides a little bit differently, so it needs a special pillowcase, and I thought it might be interesting for you guys. And in general, if there's something you would want to see on this channel when it comes to sewing, then let me know in the comments. So thank you all so much for watching. I appreciate you guys very much, and see you next time with my next project. Bye!